Hi, I'm Marv Parsons, spouse of Gene Sheldon, who joined the Sheldon Family Association back in 2011. In that 2011 annual reunion, the Sheldon Family Association president was looking to find someone to convert their old SFGS in-access database to a real genealogy program so they could produce a Sheldon book and send it to libraries. I'd like to explain the problems in converting an Access database to GEDCOM and then to RootsMagic. After 2 years working on the conversion, I created this presentation to show you what was involved. This is what I was given, an Access database with 70,000 people added into it. This database started in 1855 in a notebook and improved when in 1955 to about 2001, over 55 years, thousands of hours of letter writing and research had been done. Brett Sheldon, a guy in Nevada, then converted it from a E. Mark Sheldon DBase 4 database that was built in 1985. Note the top tabs of the progenitors, including Richard, which changed over time. This is what their data entry and database looked like. Access is built from tables of data that connect. In this, there were 3 main tables in this large file. There was a master table, a detail table, and a marriage table. In most databases, there is a link between tables, like the comp number is the link above. These tables are tied together by this unique comp number, computer number. This structure is somewhat like a modern genealogy database, yet it was a big database with lots of people. Notice how many people, and Brett had no links between these tables. The first table was a master table. It had fields for names and normal genealogy data like first name, last name. It didn't include a date of birth, but only a year of birth. It also wanted the spouse's name, but what if there was more than one spouse? The second table was a detail table, and that then contained information like the real date of birth, date of death, place along with the death place and birthplace, along with a parent's name. It also had 3 different places to keep notes, a bio note, a comment, and a data source. The data source is like genealogy resource or what book or Bible the data or the facts were found in. The third table was a marriage table. If a person was married, they needed a record in the marriage table, also giving the name of a spouse and information about them, along with details about the spouse. Now, this table also wanted the number of male children and female children to help correct errors, if any. Now, the marriage number was kept here for a second or third marriage, but in the master table, there was only one spouse. There was a problem. Because this was the first conceived and built in 1984, it had some problems. Repeating the same information is simply wrong in the modern database structure. Newer genealogy programs separate out suffix and prefix names like Mr. and Mrs., Junior or Senior. There were problems with the structure, but with some work, that could be cleaned up, maybe. That's enough for the structure of the database. Now let's look at the data itself. Problems with the data. The data was entered. As the data was entered, there was no way to see if duplicate people were being added. This started creating problems as the same person was added twice. Leaving lots of fields blank was okay, but data entry people entered words like unknown. There was no data validation, making sure for numbers or text fields, meaning a word could be put into a date field. There was also no check for correct linking between tables, and that was bad. There's a good thing about Microsoft Access. It's a great program, being very fast and able to handle huge amounts of data. You can easily filter or sort on any field, and it works well with most other standard database programs, which allowed Brett to take his DBase 4 and pull it into Access. Unlike many other database programs, Access has survived. Many others have died away and never been updated. With a good tool like Access, maybe cleaning up the data would be easy. After looking at the data, I realized there was really many more people than 70,000, as the spouses and parents of spouses weren't really counted in that 70,000 number. I found duplicate people who were both in the master table and again a second time in the marriage table. Most of the data was good, being accumulated through 60 years of careful and diligent research. But there were problems, and I'll show you some of them. 90% of that data was really good. Here's exactly what I mean. Good databases have links between tables that match. They need unique or key fields for this link. They also show the data on well-designed forms. They don't have redundant data. Good databases do use data validation to ensure that numbers are really numbers and text is really text. This database had no validation and lots of Visual Basic for application code doing all of the work. Brett had pointers. There was problems in the first file. Good databases have. I'm going to leave that part out. This is what it looked like in Access. Notice on the left side there are table names, and on the right show the main entry input form. The buttons on the top filter the data on the right side, jump to other forms to help data entry into other tables. Now, Brett had lots of features in his converted database that they didn't have before. I saw linked in tables in my copy of the database that bothered me, and those are down on the left-hand side where it has a little arrow pointing to the detail, marriage, and master table. You can see that on the left. When I clicked on these linked in tables, it said they were still on Brett's hard drive and not in the full database. The database I had. Those little arrows in the table are linked in with data not in the data itself. My copy of the database was missing these 3 tables. I hoped I didn't need them, but this is what I got. Could be a problem if they stored data that I really needed to convert this data to GEDCOM. I said that Brett had Visual Basic code behind the tables and forms, but he had over 3,000 lines of this code. And in 89 different procedures. Maybe I couldn't convert this data. I just didn't know. I can read VBA code, but it isn't easy. The green lines are comments explaining what is being done. There were very few comments in his code. I had no idea what most of the code was supposed to do. Maybe I could convert the data without needing to read or understanding the code. I sure hope so. This is what the code looked like with 330,000 lines of it. I talked about data validation before, and in a good database, consistent data entry is mandatory. Those comp number fields that hold the tables together should always start in this database with a G for Godfrey, I for Isaac, J for John, W for that other John, or R for Richard. They are the first letters of the progenitor's numbering system created for the DBase 4 database back in 1985. The Sheldon numbers were also too hard to use and inconsistent for a good data connection. Forget reading the VBA code and let's see how good and consistent the data is itself. Now, the following are some problems that with connected data on the data entry side. We'll start with the simple problem. Converting the data looked like a really big problem. I learned in college, in a college class, to solve a big problem, you start with a little piece of the problem. And there was a fourth and smaller table called sources that I started with. Attached to the detail table was this sources table. It listed where the facts came from, like found in a Bible, found in a census. So in the refer field in the detail table would be a pointer to where that person's information was found in library books or census or wherever. Now, good genealogy always lists the sources for found facts. There's a saying, genealogy without sources is mythology, which I've thought was funny. So you need to find the source and figure out where that information came from. There were problems in this first little problem. Now, this slide shows the refer table next to the source table. On the left shows 70,000 people, the numbers at the bottom, with multiple places where their facts were found, pointing to the other table on the right. On the right, there's 2,795 sources that were used to collect all of this data. Someone had typed over the first source, see that 29, making it invalid, and they needed validation for this. Here's all the places they found information that was 55 years of putting this together. Access can show me that the list of 2,795 sources had duplicates in it. This meant that one pointer to a source and another pointer to a source, both pointing to the same census, something like, census for 1900. Now, I'll need to clean that up later, but there's a little problem in there in my very first little problem. Let's just continue moving on. Worse, I found 108 of these sources that were never used. How could that happen? That will need to be cleaned up later also. These are sources that were put in that no pointer pointed to. That didn't make sense. Also, were bad computer numbers. They should start with a G for Godfrey, J for John, WR. What was this PJ? This is a computer number. Did that mean possibly John? There were only a few of these, so that'll need cleaning up also, I guess. Now, Sheldon numbers are supposed to start with an S and have 4 or 5 digits after it, and then an X sometimes if it was an extension, followed by the childbirth order number, that's after the X. There were many that didn't follow this rule in the data. Only a few of these also, so I guess these will need cleaning later too. Lots of little problems in the data. Now for a bigger problem. Almost 400 people had Sheldon number duplicates. Either a person is in the data twice in the master table, or 2 different people have the same number. Oh boy, this is going to be harder to clean up later. This is getting to be a heavier problem. Because of these duplicate computer numbers, you can't use the Sheldon number to link the tables together because those have to be unique. This must have been a data entry error, I'm hoping, but there's almost 400 of those. Bad news again. 50 spouse in the marriage table, 50 spouses Sheldon numbers can't be the correct format of the Sheldon number. They're supposed to be the exact Sheldon number of their spouse, starting with that S. Also, in that Elizabeth Harrington, about halfway down, it looks like the infamous lightning strike story that killed the power and then destroyed the database. If you look at those funny characters, that's a signal that the database wasn't closed correctly. And that might need some examination to clean up later. But most of the data is correct, right? I mean, 70,000 people, And there's only, like 50, maybe 70, 100. Cleaning the data up. Remember all those computer numbers in the master table that were pointed to the correct info in the detail table? There are 85 records in the detail table that don't have some master person pointing to them. They call these orphans in database terminology. They have no parent record in the master table. This cleanup looks like it might be getting harder than I thought. I found data entry people would put in dates for birth, death, and marriage, but not include the year in another field. Remember, it's bad in database terminology to have two places for the same kind of information. This shows there were missing year of birth when the exact date of birth was given. So in the left-hand table is the birth date exact, but they didn't fill in the year of birth. And the middle one is the death date. There's a real date, but no year. And in the marriage table, there was a real marriage date, but no marriage year. That data just simply wasn't put in there. And there was quite a few of them. Oh no. If the year of birth and the exact date of birth were both filled in, I had 675 of them that didn't match. On the very first one, you can see that 1812 is not, and that's the year, is not the birth real date of 1822. The year was different than the exact date. Which date do I believe now? Cleanup might not be possible. There must have been data entry errors. Still, most of the data was good, right? In the marriage table, there were fewer, but still 144 years that didn't match the exact date. This is now becoming a bigger problem based on looking at the data. Remember those suffixes like suffixes and prefixes in names? Should they go in the first name, middle name, or the last name fields? Now, the above are only the ones with junior in the last name field. Different data entry people put these in different fields. I need them to clean that one up too. To clean this up, I'll add two new fields. One is prefix and one is suffix, and whenever I find one of those, I'll just start cleaning them up by hand, making lots of steps. Every time there's a junior, I guess I'll put that in a suffix field. So we did that process. There was 2,385 of those that were manually cleaned up. There are two standards for nicknames in genealogy. They can have quotes around them or parentheses around them. But why did they put the nickname in a middle name field? Another field was needed for that manual fix too, so along with prefix and suffix, I created a nickname field. In the detail table, I found spouse's first name field was commonly used for extra or other information. Now, when you have a field, you're supposed to put in what information, and this is supposed to be SF name. That's the spouse's first name. Here are almost 700 manual fixes that I needed to do because the data entry people put in died young or something similar to that, trying to keep track of information, but certainly was not the spouse's first name. When looking at the master table and the marriage table, 78 of these people were exact duplicates. This means a Sheldon married a Sheldon, or simply duplication of data. Now the count of number on the 2 means that Helen Mildred Dean, with a spouse's birth date of 2, she was in the marriage table twice. There's 78 of those. Once again, I'll hope I can figure that one out. Instead of leaving blank fields, where you don't know stuff, I found a few thousand fields had the word unknown in them. So I went through and started removing and making blank the things that said unknown. And pretty soon I realized that different people had spelled unknown in different ways. I actually counted 64 different ways people had spelled unknown in the database. Ouch, once again. With each manual cleanup and writing a program to clean it up, I'd save my work and start again on a better file each week. During my conversion process, just manually cleaning up the data, I got a list of quite a few intermediate database saves. As a matter of fact, I had at least 52 and probably twice that in cleaning up the database in just the information typed in. Now, after I did a lot of cleaning, the manual cleaning, I still had 271 exact names and date of birth duplicates. I need to merge these into a single person and connect any downstream branches after the merge. I'm not really sure how to do that in Access. I'd have to create more VBA code, or maybe I could convert it to a real genealogy program, and it would make that a whole lot easier for me. This is kind of when I stopped cleaning data, not knowing how to deal with this. This data was collected and meticulously studied over 60 years. They made 15,000 index cards before typing the data into a database and converting it into Access. The Sheldon Family Association wanted this in a real genealogy program to publish in a Sheldon book. This is a great big jigsaw puzzle, and what I see now is that there was a lot of data entry problems. Let's see what I could do with it. Well, after you get the data as clean as I can, converting it to GEDCOM, which is the Genealogy Communication Standard for passing information between computer programs. If I could convert it, maybe the puzzle can be solved. GEDCOM needs the above. You need each person only once with a unique number. That's really important. Each husband-wife pair creates a family. That's also really important. Our Sheldon Family Association data shows spouses, not husbands and wives. Just another problem to solve. I had to learn a little GEDCOM. Here it comes. This is what GEDCOM needs. So I'll use the master table with the detail table for my GEDCOM people file. And then that marriage table, I'm glad they had that. I'll have to build those, but there was no spouse or parent of spouse had a number. Now there are about 125,000 people instead of 70,000, because the only people that had a Sheldon number, or a number at all, were people in the master table, not in the marriage table or the parents of those spouses. The number of 70,000 grew immediately to 125,000. I guess I'll fix that later, but I don't want to write a genealogy program in Access. I'm certainly not smart enough to do that. But if I can convert it to GEDCOM and import it, maybe a real genealogy program can correct many of these problems. Problems like the misspelling of Bowden and Bowden. These might be the same person because they have the same computer number and or Sheldon number, and then finding and fixing a lot of those typo errors. Now, about 400 people in the marriage table are not in the master table. The spouse could be a husband or a wife because they only collected spouse. GEDCOM needed husband or wife. But what do you do about a second or third marriage? Ouch, again. When do all these little problems make the job impossible? Should I give up? This was a problem. New idea. About 3/4 of the way through this problem, I decided I would give all spouses a number with a 0 in it. 0 had not been used in the database before. The first spouse would get a 01 after the computer number of their spouse that had the Sheldon number and the computer number. And after the second spouse, I'd put a 02. Now, parents would get a 0F or 0M for mother, 0F for father. And that way I could give each person a unique number. This helped a lot, but it also created another extension to the database and the numbering system. Each spouse created a family number for GEDCOM. Computer numbers can build these numbers, and GEDCOM needs those two main tables, one for individuals, and now with the 0102, I had all those spouses, and the second one for family, and again, this might work. I could put, this gets closer to GEDCOM from what we started with. Now, Access allows building forms showing a marriage couple and their children on a single screen. I could discover and fix many of those mistyped Sheldon numbers or computer numbers by sorting by date of birth of the children, and multiple spouses' children could be resolved by creating forms that fit together. This is what it looked like when I put it together, because the comp number, the computer number, was getting cleaner, and each person now had a number. The family group, like this on the side, could be displayed and reviewed. See this slide where Lydia Sheldon is the real Sheldon number, and her 01 Ambrose is the spouse, her first spouse. They had 5 children, and I could do that based on the length of the computer number string. Benjamin got married twice and had 3 children. With a good computer number system, this puzzle might be solvable. The new comp number scheme with the 0 in it was making a huge difference in unscrambling the data. I needed to do this hundreds of manual times to make corrections. Now, what fields are expected in GEDCOM? After a year I spent cleaning up the data, the old data, then it came time to put this thing into GEDCOM, a term that I had learned recently, and now I needed to understand it intimately. What is the old Sheldon family genealogy system? What are the fields? Where do they go in this GEDCOM standard? I learned and wrote Visual Basic for applications. Like I said before, I knew it a little bit because I had done some Excel programming before, and the language was similar. I started small again with the code like the above, or like the shown on this slide, which converts the date of death to GEDCOM. If there is one, then put it in. If there's not, then look for a year of death and throw it into this file. Otherwise, leave it blank. Don't use unknown. GEDCOM needed a place to include the state, but our old data had the state as a separate field. Code was needed to preserve all and any data. I needed to append the state to the place. The source, the bio node, and the comment needed to go to a field in GEDCOM. I didn't want to lose anything that was typed in. I needed to match our homegrown database to what GEDCOM allowed. New fields needed to be created for a Sheldon number and a computer number. Many programs didn't allow you to put in a user-defined field, but I needed one that did that. We needed to track our old numbering system and our new numbering system, along with this 0 added numbering system. So Access data was now clean enough to get into GEDCOM. Where might I find problems and where I might find problems to merge people together correctly? I had 120,000 individuals. I had about 43,000 families. I had over 48,000 events. I now had a computer number for each person, and individuals could be linked in a real genealogy program. Is the puzzle solved? Ready to try the conversion, but I know that there's a bunch of partial names, not enough. There's still duplicate people. There's still duplicate trees. Boy, I hope there's a good genealogy program out there. I got to fix access data was clean as I could make it, but I needed to do much more. This program needed to help with these last cleanup problems. I was worried about those orphan records and cleaning the places. Which one am I going to use? Well, I chose RootsMagic for my real genealogy database. It was reviewed as the easiest to use and allowed user-defined fields. That was for my Sheldon number and computer number, so I could keep those. It also had a way to merge duplicates and find problems. I'd been using it for about 5 years, and it was impressed with its power and built-in tools. It also had an extensive help file to help others learn to use it. If all Sheldon Family Member Association members had RootsMagic, we could clean up all the data together. Really had a really nice help system. It even had different views where you could look at a pedigree, a family, a descendant on the tabs, and it had this help system which pointed all that out. RootsMagic was a real genealogy program, not a database that was a poor substitute as the original one was. RootsMagic had 5 different views. It had a pedigree, family, descendant, people, and you could jump between those and even jump to the web to search for people. Looking at your data in the different way made a huge difference in research and helping clean things up. All the Sheldon family old genealogy system data was captured now and transferred to RootsMagic, even with the problems ready to go. RootsMagic allowed for different views of data, much better than Access database did. We could look and sort by the Sheldon number or the computer number, and it also had a field of last edited, showing what was changed last. Now, that was a real help in determining how much cleaning was done. RootsMagic had this wonderful tool called Problem Search and another to merge duplicate people together. It also claimed we could give our data to someone else who would make corrections and additions, and it could be then merged back into the file. This was a great idea. We could spread the effort out. What did we do? After getting the data into RootsMagic, there we did a report, and the report was of date problems. There was about 3,000 date problems in 72 pages. These problems were like died before they were born, or married at age of 5, or lived to 200 years old. These had to be found and fixed. RootsMagic also had this great tool of showing people side by side who might be duplicates. And it would show green where it was exactly the same, yellow where it was a little bit different, and red where the things weren't really the same, or the different records. And it allowed you to merge those people together. What a great tool. It also had another built-in tool that could only dream about while in Access. It had a 3.5 million standardized place database to correctly spell and geocode all the places in the database. It also had places for DNA, a report called Mapping Who Was There, a narrative report. Maybe this could get our data into a book. Who knows? But at least it was getting there. There was still a lot of problems in the data. It still needed cleaning to research and fix. What standards will we use to continue to clean the data and not let it slip back into invalid numbers or people? We'll clean up people and use these new comp number standards with the new 0. At the time I gave the data back to the Sheldon Family Association, These things were on my mind. Could a real genealogy program find and help fix these kinds of problems? Could they find and merge those duplicate people? A lot of work was going to need still to be done. There were still 482 people with no names. You have a person with no name. And the source still needed work on. The database being in Access enticed me to work on the problem from the beginning. Thank you, Brett Sheldon, for converting it to Access. This data started in 1855 with Henry Alcott Sheldon, and then from 1955 to 2010, they collected more information in letters and then index cards. They typed all those index cards, amazes me, and then typed it into DBase 4, then converted it to Access, and now it was in RootsMagic. Is this result good enough, yet after spending about 2 years of cleaning the data? I hoped whoever continued with this data will realize the years of effort to make it better, knowing it wasn't perfect before or after I converted it. I hope the slideshow showed the importance of correct data entry with validation and keeping things clean and correct from the beginning. It also showed some ideas of GEDCOM and finally the difference between a real genealogy program and a homemade database. Perhaps now the Sheldon Family Association can produce a family book.